I'm here with Pastor Jervin Weeks, who's the pastor of Rosewood Park Alliance Church here in Regina. And Jervin, it's great to have you with us this week on our video. And why don't you start by telling us, how long have you been in ministry in any location?
I've been in ministry for about 22 years.
Okay, 22 years. Now, at some point, you started to experience burnout, which of course is really common among leaders. What did burnout feel like?
Well, I think I really didn't understand what burnout truly felt like, because I was just going, and I thought that it was just part of ministry, that I was tired, and I would just continue to go. There's a thought that you kind of burn out for Jesus.
Of course.
You want to make maximum impact, and so it never
Jesus
really
would be pleased the more you burn out.
Yeah, well, that he would be pleased the more that you're doing, and so I never really saw it as necessarily burnout. I just saw that maybe I was just a little bit more overactive than the average person.
But eventually it started to take a toll on you.
It did. One of the things that I noticed that started to happen was my emotions. I would be easily frustrated. I would find myself being a little bit more angry. I was losing concentration. My sleep was lacking. I would go to bed and my mind would be racing. I would start experiencing insomnia. And so that was one of the things that started giving some indications. But again, I really didn't think much of it because I was really busy. I was traveling.
You were pouring yourself out for Jesus.
I was. And, it's funny, the comments that my wife used to say when we first got married. She'd say to me, everything kind of rolls off of you like water off a duck's back. But that had changed. Like everything became somewhat of an irritant after a while. And so again, the definition of burnout wasn't something like, well, here are the 5 things. It was just, hey, I feel tired. And I think that was probably more so the feeling that I had was a feeling of tiredness.
Or a term that I use a lot is, did you notice a sense of struggle?
Actually, I didn't at first, because again, I was so active.
Maybe you were using it as a treatment. By staying active, you wouldn't be left alone with your thoughts.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, was that I think the adrenaline of being active was what was carrying me through. And there was never a point of being on a low, except for when I went to bed. When I went to bed, that was when I was left with my thoughts, because I was going from morning to evening. I had appointments that I had in the evening, staff meetings and all those different activities that was happening, prepping for Sunday morning. But it was when I went to sleep, when the kids went to bed, when, that I would lay there in bed, and my thoughts would be consuming me, and it would fill with negative thoughts more than positive thoughts.
So at what point did you realize that this was more than burnout?
I think it was probably about 2 years ago. There's a friend of mine who's part of the congregation who he was always on a high. Like when I say a high, he was always smiling, was always joyous, and I could see that his countenance had changed over the course of the years that I had known him. And then he started to get treatment. He was seeing you, and went and saw his family doctor, and was being medicated for depression that he had. I didn't know that. I just knew that he was experiencing some tough times, and we talk about it. But then one Sunday morning, I saw his face, and his entire face and disposition had changed. Like the smile that I saw when I first met him was all of a sudden back. And so it was great for him. I thought, oh, this is wonderful. Like, I mean, you're being transformed. This is excellent. But it never occurred to me that that's what I was experiencing until I took sabbatical. And now I wasn't running around. I wasn't doing any of those things. I was off, and I was left to myself. And I had some traumatic experiences over sabbatical, and then I realized, oh my goodness, there's something else going on here. Went to see my doctor, spoke to you.
But your friend, who you'd seen, the smile came back, You asked him though,
I did.
what had he done?
Yeah, he like after seeing the doctor, he came over and we were actually hanging out playing video games, and I had spoken to him. I said, what's going on? And he said, actually, I've been doing Skyping with Grant Mullen, and we've been talking, and he's just been we've been spending each month just going through some sessions. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And he diagnosed me with depression, and so he encouraged me to see my family doctor, and so I went and saw the family doctor, and the family doctor concurred that he was depressed, and so
gave him medication
right. for it, and so he went on a medication. And it's funny, my friend kind of like was hesitant, but now he saw the difference, and his wife and friends around him saw the difference that it made. And so for me, going and seeing my doctor was quite interesting, that when I went and saw my family doctor, and also chatting with you, both of you had indicated that you had already seen those symptoms at least 3 years prior to that. But I hadn't.
Well, you were busy in ministry.
I was busy. I was, never took the time to stop and to do that. And then after that diagnosis, it was interesting because I was thinking to myself, man, God had already been doing some stuff in my life. I'd taken sabbatical, and he had used events to turn me around. And I remember just starting to experience just the presence of God in my life. And when my doctor, you and also my doctor, suggested the thought of medication, the first thing that came to mind was, okay, I'm experiencing God in a way that I haven't in a very long time. If I take this medication, will it interrupt, or will it cause anything to different?
To be dull.
To be dull. Yeah. And so my doctor had said to me no, and then you had said to me, actually, all it will do is that it will just heighten your senses, help you to focus a whole lot more, that when you're sitting down, preparing for your messages, and also whatever else you're doing, that you find yourself really focused. But also, one of the things that you had said to me was, you had given me the analogy of communicating with God, that my antenna had been down, and so basically, I'm feeling like I'm not experiencing God, and I'm frustrated. I'm studying. I'm doing all these things, and all that the medications will do is help my antenna to come back, to build my serotonin level back up, and that made sense to me. And so I'm on the lowest dose of my medication, which actually surprised you. And my doctor, actually, it surprised my doctor, because the transformation that started occurring. And
actually, what difference have you noticed since you took the medicines?
Well, everything. Like my concentration, I love to study, and so my studying in itself just changed. My wife had said to me, you're back to how you were. You're like water off a duck's back, and nothing really irritates you as much as
and
it is.
And relationship with God?
Relationship with God is stronger than it's been. I equate it to when I first, back when I was a teenager, before I went to Bible school, and my experience with God then was just incredible, and that's how it is now. And to say that as a pastor, well, my experience with God as a teenager was really great. So what happened in the last 20 years? Well, you know what? Like, part of it was that I had spent the last 20 years gaining a lot of head knowledge, and doing the things of ministry, and looking at all the different ways that we do ministry well. And yes, even though that I was studying, and I was reading, and I was spending time in prayer and devotion, doing became more important than being. And so I got completely just consumed with the ministry, and missed out on the experience of God ministering to me. And in doing so, I think I found myself going down in a downward spiral of feeling overwhelmed and not acknowledging what it was. And I'm glad actually that I went down that direction, because now I'm able to see the difference. I think for a lot of pastors, there is maybe a fear, or just Christians in general, there's a fear of, if I acknowledge or admit that I'm experiencing any types of depression, then I'm weak, or people will view me differently.
Or that God would be upset with you.
Right. And the truth of the matter is that, it's not just a mental thing that happens, it's a physical thing, it's a physiological thing that's happening within your body, that your chemicals are depleted. But one of the things that also stands in our way is that of pride, that we get to that place where we fail to acknowledge, something's wrong here. So, when my kids would say to me, my son would say to me, why is Daddy so upset? Over just a little tiny thing, I would be irritated. Now it's a completely different interaction with them, and it's wonderful.
So Jervin, what would you say to leaders who are watching, or even anyone who's watching, but leaders specifically, what would you say to them if they are noticing some of the same symptoms, or they're starting to sag in burnout?
I would say don't wait until it's too late. If you're even just watching this and you are getting a sense that, oh, those are some of the symptoms that I've had, I would see someone. I would go and see your family doctor and be honest with your family doctor and say, what, this is where I've seen these changes occurring, and just to go through the assessment. He'll give you a sheet that you have to fill out, and he's going to assess where you're at. But also, don't let pride stand in the way. Mm-hmm. I think that's the biggest thing, is that we allow pride to stand in the way, and we're fearful of being ashamed that all of a sudden, people are going to look at us in a different way. Our congregation members who hold us in spiritual esteem to say, hey, you're my spiritual leader, will all of a sudden think, less of us. When in actuality, believe it or not, there are people within our congregation who are struggling with this, and they also, believe it or not, need permission. If you can even say that. I've spoken here to my congregation about it, and there are people who've actually gone and seen their doctor and have recognized the symptoms in themselves, and now are being treated. And so I think part of being a pastor isn't just about getting up and preparing the word for them on a Sunday morning, but there's a level of authenticity. We see that
leading by example.
You are, and sometimes we fail in that, and that's when things happen. And sometimes when we are transparent and authentic, we're able to help those who are sitting in our congregation, and we give them permission. I think most of us may end up feeling like Elijah. If we would admit it, how many times as leaders have we sat under our broom tree and we've said to God, take me now. I just want to die, or that feeling has come over us and we haven't seen anyone. And if you actually look at some of the stats that are out there, there are a lot of pastors who have gotten to themselves to that place where they're so depressed and they haven't seen anyone, that they have taken that ultimate step in ending their life. And my encouragement for any leader or any congregation member is, go and get help. There's no shame in getting help.
Or taking the medicine.
Or taking the medicine.
Yeah. And a counselor, a doctor, a pastor, talk to someone. And so, Jervin, I want to thank you for being on the video with us, to sharing your story, because it's encouraging any Christian to don't ignore it. Your life can be so much better. And so it's great to have you come and join us this week. And if you want to subscribe to get this video every week, just fill out the subscription form, which you can find on this page. And I'll talk to you again next week. But if you're struggling with any of these symptoms, go and get help. God will be very pleased with you.